You stay classy over there, Kody.
I'm trying, Otema. I'm trying. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fishin, the podcast where we discuss Merfolk and Merfolk accessories and try to help all Merfolk players to become the best that they can be. My name is Kody. I'm one of the hosts of this show, and not Kody Smith on Twitter. I'm not joined, as usual, by my co-host and co-host emeritus, Dorian, who you can find on Twitter as Crinkle Biscuit, and Matt, who you can find on Twitter as Matthew Cotto 8s. So I'm not joined by them, but I'm not going to do a podcast by myself. I have a great guest from the Magic community who reached out to me with a really awesome idea for a show topic, and when I heard it, I was like, oh man, that's such a good idea. So I'm really excited to have Otema. Otema, how's it going, buddy?
Hey man, it's going pretty good. I wasn't going to let you roll this show alone.
Yeah, I thought about trying one by myself, but I was like, I've never heard somebody do a podcast, like a Magic podcast where it was just one person. I mean, I guess Zuby does. He does that from time to time, but that's kind of more like a blog style, I guess.
I have a lot of respect for people who can run a podcast by themselves. I am not one of those people. So, you know, credit to all the people who can, but I can definitely understand why you wouldn't want to roll this show alone.
And where can people find you on the social medias?
I am on the tweeters. I'm on the tweeters at its_Otema. That's ITS_OTEMA. You can also find me on twitch.tv at its_Otema. I stream extremely rarely. Something I'm looking to get a little bit more into, but for now, you know, check me out on Twitter.
Sweet. And so we'll make sure to have all that information in the show notes and all that. Remember that you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We're on Twitch too, as you know, everything is at Fishcast MTG. I need to get back into streaming some more. It's on my to-do list. Just things have been crazy, and you know, we're a little busy. Remember that you can go to patreon.com/fishcastmtg, and at the $2 level, you get the show a few days early and ad-free. I'm working on getting caught back up on actually putting out episodes, so I do apologize to my $2 patrons. But basically, if you're a $2 patron, that $2 is way more than we ever get, you know, annually in ads. So we'll always have the show for free with the ad support to kind of help us with our upkeep costs for the server and all that fun stuff. And but yeah, so make sure to check that out if you would like to support us, and we greatly appreciate our patrons' support. Remember that you can also go to Inked Gaming. There will be a link in the description that you can go get Fishin playmats or Fishin t-shirts and all that fun stuff. Make sure to use that code to get 10% off your order and kick back a little bit of money towards your buddies here. You can also go to Cartamajigs and get our tokens with art by Ishton on Twitter. Ishton is an excellent artist, and whenever I've given people in my life, even people that don't really play Magic, these tokens just like as like a quote business card, and like people just love the art, and so go find those. So you know, yeah, go find those on Cartamajigs, and that will also help us out. Before we get into this episode, I touched on this on the last episode that we recorded. I have in my hands a pack of Aaron Miller foil tokens, and the day that this episode goes live, we will have a little Gleam link in our description to have a chance to win the pack. We will. I'll probably be doing a video or something like that on what they look like, and the art is just amazing on these tokens. Aaron Miller, friend of the show, was a great guest episode. So if you haven't listened to the episode with Aaron Miller, we go into a lot about making art for Magic, and Aaron, on top of doing art for Magic, does his own playmats and tokens and whatnot. So I highly suggest checking out his tokens. They're very high quality, and I enjoy them a lot. And these premium ones are even foil, so like they're incredible art and they're foiled out, and that makes my heart happy. So we're gonna jump into the random Merfolk, and Otema, I had you pick a random Merfolk. And you picked random Merfolk 154. Would you like to read that card for us?
I did, and the card that I have randomly selected is Rootwater Diver. It is a Merfolk creature from, let's see what it says, this is from Tempest. He says, tap, sacrifice Rootwater Diver, return target artifact card from your graveyard. to your hand, he is a 1/1 for a single blue.
That's pretty cool. Not gonna lie.
It's a card I actually really like as a 1-drop Merfolk, which is kind of tie in a little bit what we're going to talk about today. But it's an incredibly useful card, and I was a little surprised when I was kind of going back and doing a little research on my own that this card didn't come into my mind automatically, because it is a really powerful little 1-drop.
Yeah, and that's the topic we're going to be talking about is 1-drops in Merfolk, and kind of discussing their purpose and comparing them a little bit. But Rootwater Diver, when you said that this was one of those cards that was on your high on your list, I was like, well, it's not even modern legal. And then I thought, oh, we just got a Merfolk that puts things into the graveyard. Mm-hmm. Ooh, that's actually really and it hit me it hit me in waves, and I was just like, oh snap, that is actually really cool. It would be actually kind of interesting to build a legacy deck around Rootwater Diver and that. Oh, geez, what's the name of that card? The Lady of the Lake.
Emery, Lurker of the Loch.
Yeah, Emery. I wanted to say Emery, but then I was thinking of a Screamo band from 2004, so I mixed up those names, and this is the 5th podcast I've recorded this week. Jeez, I need to stop doing this. So yeah, I mean, do you have any additional thoughts on Rootwater Diver?
Well, part of me wishes, because I don't play as much Legacy Merfolk as I used to, primarily for budgetary reasons. I actually had to let go of a set of 4. That's neither here nor there. But even in modern Merfolk, I'm playing with 4 Aether Vial, 4 Chalice of the Voids. Anything that can help me recur artifacts is great, not to mention any, potential combo that might be there with something like an Emery and Rootwater Diver. So it's a card I wish they would print into modern and, beyond with that.
And it's an interesting card and has a really specific ability. This looks like a card that could definitely see play outside of Merfolk. And I don't think it's something that's necessarily too powerful. I mean, retrieving an artifact from your graveyard is really cool, but it's also just a very not blue thing to do. That's a very red ability.
Some of the most fun things you'll ever do, though, are the ones that break the color pie. It's not like Wizards of the Coast has had much of a strong feeling about keeping things within their color pie lately or anything.
Oh, and color pie violations are one of my favorite things. If you've seen me on stream, I have a mono green control deck. I have a mono blue tokens deck. I love doing playing outside, coloring outside the lines of what people expect from a specific color. So I really do like Rootwater Diver, and I know I do have a playset of them, so I might have to try it out in Legacy. I mean, it would be kind of cool to just pitch a Sword of Fire and Ice, and then with Emery, and then sack Rootwater Diver to get it back to your hand, and just basically be able to select from any number of equipment, or even like you said, Aether Vial, Chalice of the Void. Also great cards in Legacy.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily have the world's greatest brain for brewing. Of course, my first thoughts were, of course, every chance that my opponents get, my vial's gone, my chalice is gone. So anything I can do to get those back in my hand, back into play, that's immediately where my brain goes with cards like this.
Yes, I definitely like that a lot. So let's go ahead and jump into the main topic here. We can kind of segue very nicely into this because of Rootwater Diver. What you wanted to talk about was there's a bunch of 1-drop Merfolk. Most of them are definitely not playable in a competitive sense, like what we would think of as modern or Legacy, and even in Commander, a lot of 1-drop Merfolk are not. Unless it has a specific purpose like Rootwater Diver, we're definitely not really looking at the 1-drops. But in especially in Modern, that 1-drop slot is very contentious now.
Yeah, especially because in the last 2 years we've seen 2 different 1-drop Merfolk being printed that have taken the Curse Catcher slot. Is kind of the slot I've always thought of it as, with Benthic Biomancer and Kumena Speaker being printed in. Kumena Speaker was that Rival or Ixalan, and then Benthic Biomancer in Ravnica Allegiance.
Yep.
I'm actually impressed. I'm usually very bad at remembering the sets that things were printed in.
No, that's very impressive. I remember, because we did have a bunch of just cheap Merfolk, and it was just like, oh, it's kind of like Tidebinder Mage. They just kind of throw in a utility Merfolk every once in a while, and we've just kind of had a string of them, and within the last 2 years, I'd say. So what is your initial read on this new complexity for the deck?
Well, I have to be honest. At first, when I saw that Ixalan was bringing us blue and green Merfolk, the addition of green was not something I was terribly keen on. I really enjoyed the printing of cards like Kumena, Tyrant of Arazga, but all in all, I was still, and even still to this day, maybe to some degree, I was still fairly staunchly in the mono blue Merfolk, trying to keep it pure and keep it the way I always played it. So I was a little cagey when they printed Kumena Speaker and was more excited once we started seeing like Benthic Biomancer coming down the pipeline. But, I lost my train of thought. Sorry.
No, we when we got Benthic Biomancer, I don't know, like it kind of feels to me that playing Curse Catcher, Curse Catcher believe me, has its place in Merfolk. Maybe not currently, but it's definitely still a viable option as a 1-drop. And us being a creature deck and being a fair creature deck in Modern and Legacy, that definitely puts us behind a lot of much better value creatures in the formats. And so selecting your 1-drop is very important because we need to be getting bodies down.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it. And the other part of it for me too is, in my mind, and the way I've always sort of built my decks, is Merfolk is a creature deck second, almost to the fact that it's a tempo deck first. And Curse Catcher was an amazing tempo card, and I just didn't see that coming along with Kumena Speaker and Benthic Biomancer right on the outset.
Yeah, I remember Ben took a little bit of time for the community to kind of warm up to. But once Benthic Biomancer really started, hitting hard, then it was like, oh, well, that just gives it. Benthic Biomancer came right after Merfolk Trickster, which is kind of more of an auto, slot. But Benthic Biomancer kind of showed us like, oh, we're holding up mana to keep our Tricksters and our Deprives in hand. We didn't have Force of Negation at the time. But,
right.
So it's like, well, okay, Ben actually kind of helps us play into our strategy. We can keep mana back and basically play almost exclusively on our opponent's turn. So that's really the value that Benthic Biomancer added, was like, oh, we keep up the mana. If they don't play something, we can flash in a Trickster. We can activate a Benthic Biomancer. We've got options.
Exactly, and that card definitely spoke to me a lot more when it came along. When it was first printed and it released, I went out and bought 4 of them as fast as I could and started testing with them, because I like that aspect of, like you say, play it on somebody else's turn, control the tempo of the game, and then at the top, and then kind of in the later game is where the creature game really starts to power in. Because at the time I was still playing the 4 Master of Waves and and things like that.
Well, I don't know why you wouldn't play 4 Master of Waves, but
I'm actually, my current build does not include a single Master of Waves, and I feel like I'm cheating. I'm cheating on the archetype right now.
Oh, geez. Well, we can get into that at a later time, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So Ben, I think, is kind of more of the default than Curse Catcher is, for sure. Like if I were to hand a Merfolk deck to somebody who is brand new and learning how to play Magic, Benthic Biomancer I think has a really high floor and a kind of medium ceiling. You don't lose very much by playing Ben.
That's very true. It's at its absolute worst, it's a 1-mana 1/1. That is easily buffed by the rest of what we have going on. But at its absolute best, it's a beast of a card that has to be dealt with.
Definitely, and there are some, I'm sure we'll talk about more of the Merfolk in a bit, but there are definitely Merfolk that are good, 1-drops that are good, like you said, Mistcaller, but if your opponent's not like cheating things in, then it's worse than Ben by a long shot. So, Ben is, I think, kind of the new, general purpose one drop, but we've had some contention for that. What's the next card on your list?
So the next card that I kind of have on my list is a card I used to play with, and I actually think it could still have some legs to this day, is a card called Kody's Trickster from the original Zendikar set.
And Kody's Trickster actually does have legs, so not unlike ZZ Top, she knows how to use them.
You are not wrong. For those of you who don't know, it's a 1-mana 1/1 that says whenever an opponent shuffles his or her library, you may put a +1/+1 counter on Kody's Trickster.
Yeah, Kody's Trickster, we've had Untap Upkeep Jay on the show, and she's really big on Kody's Trickster. She really likes the card a lot. And it's definitely a card that's good, but there are definitely decks that Kody's Trickster is only conditionally good against. So it's like if your opponent's playing Jund or maybe like some sort of blue-white X deck, where they're playing lots of shocks and fetches. Kody's Trickster is good there, but in decks like Scape Shift and Humans and stuff like that, where there's nary a fetch to be found, Kody's Trickster kind of suffers a little bit.
Yeah, and it's 100% valid. One of the last tournaments I played in, I think the 5 rounds I played 4 against Jund, and in my mind I was thinking, this is like this would have been the perfect tournament to finally give a shot to Kody's Trickster. But then again, you'll go, it wasn't that long ago that I could play 5 rounds and 3 of them would be against Humans, and it would be a miserable 1/1 that never got any action. So it's definitely a meta call, but I still, I think in the modern meta as we see it now, I think this card could actually still turn some heads.
Yeah, and again, not to speak poorly of Kody's Trickster, but Ben, like against Humans is something that we can grow a little bit bigger and also kind of filter through our deck. Curse Catcher, similarly to Kody's Trickster, is just notoriously bad against heavy creatures like spirits and humans and other Merfolk decks. But there's definitely something to be said for Kody's Trickster. Now I don't know if this card is on your list at all, but I did want to bring it up because I know Nikachu's been having some success with this. And there have also been a few other recent 5-0s. Is Kumena's Speaker?
Kumena's Speaker is an absolute beast of a card that I have actually kind of adopted to playing in. I've adopted to playing in my list because I've kind of made it kind of goes back to what I was talking about there, the shift from an aggro creatures deck to more of a tempo aggro, or more of an aggro tempo deck. And Kumena's Speaker is emblematic of the switch to a more aggro-based strategy in my mind.
Yeah, and Kumena's Speaker, again, most of the time is a 2/2 for 1. So, yeah. Just being a 2/2, basically, if we curve correctly, Kumena's Speaker can attack on turn 2 for 3 damage. If we Kumena's Speaker Lord, that's it. So that's pretty good.
No, I mean, it's absolutely good. It's it's the first time talking about it's the first time I'm talking about a deck that isn't in Legacy that I've been excited about something that's a 2 power for 1 mana. Joking about Delver decks there where you can get a 3/2 for 1 mana. But the only drawback I find to it is it's a 1 green mana card where typically I need to curve from 1 green into double blue. So, there's mana base issues that go along with that. If you can get around those, I mean, it's a beast of a card. Absolutely.
Yeah. And again, it's, it's better than a Piker. It's got 2 toughness, which, in modern, maybe not as much Legacy, there's a lot of spot removal, Path to Exile bolts, Searing Blood, I guess mostly from Jund or Burn are kind of the creature removal decks. but still, Commander Speaker, for the value that you get out of it, yeah, if it dies, it dies, but you're still putting damage, on the board. So Commander Speaker is really good for that.
Absolutely. The maybe the only drawbacks I find to it, and that's and I don't know if maybe I'm just a little bit too much of a thinking of this, like I said, a little bit too much with the get off my porch kids mentality, but it's a mono green card, and that's if that's the only drawback I can find to it, especially with the mana bases that we have available to us, that tells you something. It's a really good card.
Back in my day, we played Curse Catcher and we liked it.
back in my day, we were excited when we pulled a Merfolk of the Pearl Trident from our packs. There wasn't even a master yet.
We had to play our Merfolk in the snow uphill both ways, 60 miles to the one-room schoolhouse.
Yeah, those were the golden days. Let me tell you.
So what? So I mean, we. I don't know how much more we have to really say about Commander Speaker. It's a beefy boy, and he puts a lot of damage across the table. What's the next card for you on your list?
I started diving pretty deep. I actually went back and looked because the joke's on me there. I actually bit of story about me. I actually quit playing Magic around about the time of Alliances. And I took a nice long break, kind of keeping my eyes around the game, but not really playing it. And I came back in seriousness with the Lorwyn block. And so I put this card called Tideshaper Mystic from the Lorwyn block on my list.
Ooh, Tideshaper Mystic. That is definitely... so this is actually very similar to another card that I wanted to discuss, Tidal Warrior. Which target land becomes an island until end of turn. It's the same thing. It's a 1-mana 1/1. But Tideshaper Mystic being, I think, a modern legal version of Tidal Warrior. Tidal Warrior is not modern legal.
Tidal Warrior is not modern legal, only in Legacy. But Tideshaper Mystic.
Yeah, Tideshaper Mystic is basically the same card.
Except for it can turn target land into a basic of any type until the end of turn, and you can only do it on your turn.
Yeah, I mean, Tidal Warrior, like, the only reason you did that was on your turn anyway. So I don't, in Legacy, it's been used to some extent to, just force Island Walk. And I mean, honestly, that's not a bad strategy because most games of Legacy that I've played, I beat a lot of blue decks. But I always have trouble against basically non-blue decks. So like Delver and all that, I can definitely get enough damage across. And Tidal Warrior can kind of help. Tidal Warrior and Tideshaper Mystic can both kind of help tip the scale in the correct way, I think.
No, absolutely. Being able to come down and, like you say, to force Island Walk. It also has that kind of that corner case ability of being able to fix your own mana if you absolutely have to. Just kind of just all around great utility card in my mind.
So actually, there's a third Tideshaper Mystic Tidal Warrior in this 1-mana Merfolk trio. It's Reef Shaman. It costs a blue, and it's a Merfolk, and it's a 0/2. Target land's type becomes the basic land type of your choice until end of turn. But that one's a 0/2, so I definitely don't want that.
Yeah, I think going from a 0/2 to a 1/1, I'm not sure it's going to make a huge difference. But is Reef Shaman legal in anything outside of Legacy Vintage?
I believe it's Pauper, Legacy, Vintage, and Commander legal.
Okay, so yeah, it's Apocalypse. Okay, I see that now. Oops. I will say though, of the three, Reef Shaman does have the best looking art of the trio.
Oh, for sure. Reef Shaman is a beautiful card. But I definitely I like both Tideshaper Mystic for its very Lorwyn-y art. I've gone on record many times saying that that's something I'm interested in. And Tidal Warrior, its art's basically been the same. It's been updated a little bit to look a little bit nicer, but And Tidal Warrior just looks creepy. It's got its like eyes on the sides of its head. It's basically a fish with like a human body.
Some of the art that we were getting out of that we were getting for the Merfolk there for a couple of years back in that early 2000s era of Magic. Some of it still is the stuff of nightmares for me. I would love to be able to bring up a card like Manta Riders as being something that is kind of being able to pull that and say, this would be a great card. But there have been, if I'm remembering correct, it's either 29 or 30 Merfolk 1-drops had been printed in the history of the game. And I think we have just about hit on most of the highlights from it outside of something like a Manta Riders. There is, I think that there should be a mention of at least Merfolk Secret Keeper, which was, printed this past year in Throne of Eldraine.
Yeah, but I was gonna say with Merfolk Secret Keeper is definitely something that's been helpful in Standard. I don't know how much more it could be of help. Maybe in that Emery build that we just kind of discussed, kind of helping to fill up your yard. But yeah, I mean, there have been some interesting ones like Enclave Cryptologist is a very interesting card. But it's staying a 0/1 is really rough for competitive play like in Modern or Legacy. In Commander, it's good because you can draw, you can loot and eventually just draw cards. Similar to Manta Riders, I think that Skywatcher Adept is interesting. I just wish that its level up mechanic didn't cost 3. I think maybe if it costed 2, it would be, it'd be manageable. But costing 3 to level up is really bad.
I was playing with Coral Helm Commander quite a lot when there for a while when I first got into playing Modern Merfolk and I first got into Modern, and I loved that card, and I became aware of Skywatcher Adept around the same time. And you're right, that 3 mana for a level up is just too much.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a few other 1-drop Merfolk we've discussed on the show before. Some recent ones like Miss Cloaked Herald. We've had Marrow Wit Sniper as a random Merfolk. But again, it's just ability of putting the top card of target player's library into the graveyard is not great. And of course we have the old tried and true Merfolk of the Pearl Trident as our shining example of what a 1/1 Merfolk really could live up to be.
And you bring up Marrow Wit Sniper, and part of the reason I brought up earlier Merfolk. Part of the reason I brought up earlier Merfolk Secret Keeper is Marrow Wit Sniper will always hold a tight place in my heart, along with a card called Ink Dissolver, because when I first came back and started playing Standard in 2008 or so, I was playing a draft chaff of a deck that was called Merfolk Mill, because I was playing Ink Dissolver, Marrow Wit Sniper with my Marrow Commerces and not winning a single FNM.
Oh, geez. Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to say that I'm like super surprised by those results, but it is an interesting card to try out.
Oh, it was horrible, especially with all of Time Spiral still being legal at the time. I was just getting laughed off the table every time I played, but I was having more fun than anybody in that room. I'll tell you that much.
That's really what it's all about. It's about playing a game and having fun with your friends. I don't see a purpose in Magic. I know that also Nikachu has kind of messed with Docra Mystic a little bit. Docra Mystic is blue for a 1/1 that has blue and a tap. Each player reveals the top card of his library. You may put the revealed cards into their owner's graveyards. If you don't, each player draws a card.
I will always be impressed by that man's ability to go and find the deepest cuts he can from the list of Merfolk. Doctor Mystic is, I can see the value in it. I don't know how it played out for him, but I don't see it. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
No, it's definitely not high on my list. But it's something to look at.
That's true. And that's one of the things that was definitely, as I was going through the list, because initially, when I brought up the subject, it was, in my mind, there's Benthic Biomancer, Curse Catcher, and Kumena's Speaker. Mistcaller briefly there for a while was seeing some play. Miscloaked Herald is doing work for me in my commander deck. Outside of those, though, I was like, I was doing my digging on it. I was like, there's some really good utility cards in here, but there are not a ton of great options at the 1-drop slot.
Yeah, I mean, that's a little unfortunate considering how many Merfolk there are, but I don't know how much more stress we can take at the one. How many more decks can do this? Can bear it.
And when I look at some of the other tribes and the options that they have at 1-drop, I look over at Goblins, and of course I'm a little jealous of the choices that they have available to them.
Yeah.
And I don't try to compare any of the tribes to the others because they've all kind of had their different days in the sun. And some people still kind of laugh at me and tell me that Merfolk's days in the sun are over. But then again, the best 1-drop, of the 3 top 1-drops that all Merfolk players talk about, 2 have been printed in the last 2 years.
Yeah, and that can definitely be an example of excuse me.
No, you're fine, man.
And that can definitely be something that it's good that we've gotten playables in the last couple of years. But that also kind of brings up, how many more playable cards other tribes have gotten. I know that they don't want to make Merfolk super powerful or anything like that, but it is definitely interesting to see how Wizards is doling out the 1-drops, as it were. And again, we do have a good selection, and if you know your meta, that's definitely helpful because you can pick up as you go and pick the 1-drop that's right for you. However, if you're going into a wide open meta, I mean, Ben is just, I feel like, still the holdout.
Yeah, and I'm 100% on board with that. If that is, and it's one of those, which game do you want to play? Do you want to play tempo or do you want to play aggro? Right now I've moved more towards the aggro side of things, and I'm kind of drifting myself back, and I've been playing Kumena's Speaker as a 4-of as my only 1-drop, and now I'm kind of moving myself back to the Benthic Biomancer as my primary 1-drop because I'm moving back to that almost 100% tempo build.
All right, so we're going to do our closing segment, which is the opening hand, which makes no sense if you think about it longer than 1.2 seconds. The most recent top 8 on MTG top 8s is from MTG user JS Vano. And so I have a version of the deck that's very close to it, and we're just going to pull an opening hand. Since this is an odd episode, we will be on the draw, and we're just assuming that we would have made no sideboarding concessions. But I'll go ahead and draw a 7-card hand, and we'll discuss it and see if it's worth keeping.
All right.
So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, so 7 Yu-Gi-Oh cards. All right, so what we've got in our opening hand, we have a Spreading Seas, a Force of Negation, a Master of Waves, a Spell Pierce, an Island, a Waterlogged Grove, and a Mutavaults.
That is indeed a hand of Magic cards.
It's very interesting because obviously we can lead off with an Island and keep Spell Pierce up, Spell Pierce and Force of Negation, I guess. And we have enough lands that we can keep. We're not going to be wanting for mana. And Spreading Seas does help us dig a little bit deeper. I think I would keep this hand just because of the Force of Negation in here, because we could pitch the Master of Waves. That's definitely a card that wouldn't come into play until later. But that's just my opinion. I mean, we can dig a few cards after we hear what you have to say about it.
And honestly, I probably would lean towards the keep as well. Having the Force Negation, having the Master of Waves, to pitch to the Force Negation, having the Spell Pierce, and also Waterlogged Grove being able to replace itself. Yeah, I would probably hold on to this one myself.
Yeah, so our next draw would have been a Benthic Biomancer. And so, because then we could play Benthic Biomancer out. Next turn, we would draw a Phantasmal Image, and then we could play Spreading Seas and draw into Oboro Palace in the Clouds. So, this isn't a bad hand. I think it's a little slow. It's definitely more control-y than we might like. But obviously, we wouldn't know, what our continuing draws would be. So that's a little bit of privileged information, I think.
Yeah, and I've been known to keep some sketchy hands in my day, and just from what I'm seeing, because I like playing the control game, I like playing the tempo game, and having Mutavault there to push a little damage as needed. I think it's perfectly reasonable to keep. I think you might be sweating a bit as that game is unfolding, depending on your matchup. But, I think it would definitely at least be worth seeing where the hand would go.
Yeah, definitely. So I think our verdict is keep for this hand. All right, Otema, it was great having you on and discussing all this Merfolk goodness. Where can people find you on the internet?
Once again, I am on the tweeters. You can find me at its_Otema. Also at twitch.tv/its_Otema. And those are the two primary places that I hang around, mostly on Twitter. I don't stream as much as I'd like to. Something I'm looking to get back into.
Awesome. So we'll definitely have to drop you a follow, and I'll try to drop in on some of your streams. I've been trying to get back into it more myself. I might stream a little bit tonight, actually. But yes, thank you so much for coming on and talking with us about one drops. If you want to discuss what your favorite Merfolk one drop is, please let us know in the comments on YouTube or in anywhere you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, is at FishcastMTG. We are on Twitch, it's twitch.tv/FishcastMTG. And I'm about to die, so I need to stop talking so much. And remember that you can go to patreon.com/FishcastMTG to support us at the $2 level and get the show a few days early and ad-free. Thank you so much for your support to all of you. I guess I should plug my other show. I haven't done that in a while. My other show is Laser Style. It's a podcast about a Facebook group about a podcast, and it's just an interview show where I interview people. I've interviewed cowboys and comic book writers and directors on that show, and it's a fun show. So if you want a non-magic outlet for more Kody Smith in your life, that's how you get it. Thank you everybody for listening, and Otema, thank you again for coming on the show, and we will see everybody next week.
Bye guys.